Thank you so much for the invitation, and I will show you some of my pictures of the Trans Dinarica route mainly. Oops, how do I change? Next slide. So some facts and figures to my trip. I've been on the road for 9 months, so 281 days. I cycled through 18 countries and covered around 13,500 kilometers, and I can't count how many meters of climbing I did. I only had 4 flat tires, which I'm pretty proud of, and zero food poisoning, zero accidents, and I've never been sick on this entire journey. And yeah, I'm very scared of vomiting, so I'm very proud that I didn't get any food poisoning. And yeah, I had so many wonderful encounters in every single country, and I would do this trip over again immediately. I started 1 year ago on the 11th of March from Munich, um, and then I crossed to Austria, to Innsbruck, where I've studied, and I did my first rest day in Innsbruck. And then I crossed Italy back to Austria, and then in Slovenia I joined the Trans Dinarica route and followed it all the way to Croatia. In Croatia, I did a little detour because I navigated wrong. It was my own fault. I was reading the map wrong, so I cycled in the complete opposite direction, but I just kept going. And yeah, then I had to do a little detour via Zadar, and then I came back onto the route all the way through Bosnia. And in Montenegro, I also had to do some detours because it was the end of March and I still had snow and my route was closed. The road was closed in the Durmitor National Park, so I couldn't cross it because there was too much snow. And in Albania, I cycled until Peshkopi and I met some guys in the mountains and they live in Tirana, so I decided to go visit them. So I left the route there, and from Albania, I continued onwards through Greece. And via Crete and Rhodos, I made my way to Turkey. I crossed all of Turkey in the middle of summer. It was very hot, but very beautiful. And then I cycled all the way to Tbilisi. It's the capital of Georgia. And because of the political situations, I decided to take a plane and I flew to Tashkent. And then I started cycling again from Bukhara. I cycled through the Pamir Highway, through Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. And then I crossed into China. And from China, I went to Korea by boat. And from Korea, I took the ferry to Japan. And with some zigzags, I finally made my way to Tokyo. Yeah, so this was basically my route. In China, I took trains and buses because I only had 30 days visa free. So I cycled in the western provinces of Yunnan and Sichuan, which are not as densely populated and very beautiful. So why did I choose the Trans Dinarica route? I've cycled in the Balkans like 3 times before, so I already knew that I loved this region of our world, and I chose it because, yeah, it promised small roads and paths, very easy to navigate, and it was very good for me as a start of such a big journey to just have a certain route that I want to follow in the beginning, and then I can get used to everything, traveling solo, wild camping, and everything. And of course, endless bureks along the way, which is the perfect fuel for hungry cyclists. I ate so many, I can't count how many I ate. And I started in March and cycled into April. The pros of starting early in the year is you have the country totally to yourself. It's super empty, quiet, and it's not too hot. Downside is the strong bura winds in Croatia, which I'm still traumatized by. I had 2 weeks of constant head and side wind. I got blown off my bike multiple times. So yeah, you need strong mental health if you want to cross Croatia in spring because of the strong winds. And unfortunately, my road in Montenegro was closed. So this was on my way across the Brennero into Italy. And then I encountered the first snow of the trip. I made my way into Vipiteno, where I had a nice Italian pizza and tried to drive from the rain and snow because I was soaking wet and cold. Before I made my way across the Pustatal, people were still on skiing holidays, and I was on the campsite with my bicycle just hiding in the washing room because it was warm and dry. And yeah, people were skiing. And then I made my way to Slovenia. Slovenia welcomed me with blue skies and sunshine. I had beautiful view on the Socha Valley, But unfortunately, the weather turned bad, and I didn't see a lot of Slovenia because, yeah, it was cloudy and gray most of the time. Here in the picture, you can see what kind of paths and small roads you will find along the Trans Dinarica routes. And even with my heavy setup, I managed to cycle nearly everything. And I met a guy from Belgium, and we cycled 10 days together through Slovenia and Croatia. And he's also the guy who took all the nice pictures of me, so credits to Rafael. Um, yeah, unfortunately, as you can see, we didn't see a lot. And it's always good when it's freezing cold that you make friends with big hands and extra pair of gloves, so you can borrow their gloves when your gloves are soaking wet. So yeah, I was wearing everything that I brought on this trip because it was like -degrees and very cold. And then we got ourselves a little hotel when we made our way into Croatia. And of course, we're bicycle travelers. We had to cook on the balcony. And also because there was no restaurant in this little town. Croatia welcomed us with sunshine, and the roads were super nice. Everything smelled of the fresh herbs that were growing on the roadside. Like you could smell all the fresh herbs, and slowly we felt like spring is around the corner. And yeah, the paths were super nice, and we sometimes had a little technical terraining to do, but it was all manageable. And then we made our way to the sea, which was a very beautiful moment. And at this time of the year, it was super calm, like no other tourists, just us. Sometimes it felt a little bit like a ghost town because so many shops were still closed or under construction. But yeah, we enjoyed our time. And then, as you can see in the background, you can see the mountains that we just crossed and we're about to head into again. Unfortunately, it's not a problem of the Balkans, but a worldwide problem. The trash that's on the roadside, and here we cycled past a place where people drop their plastic and trash, and in the background you can see all the plastic hanging in the trees, and made me very angry and sad. And unfortunately, I encountered it in nearly every country I crossed. So, yeah. And in Croatia, I cycled one of the most beautiful gravel roads of this entire trip. Like no cars, no traffic, just me and Rafael, beautiful view on the sea, on the islands, and very nice gravel road. Some impressions. And of course, I was cycling with a guy who loved to take pictures, so I have some nice pictures from the Balkan. Here you can see my daily 11 a.m. Burek stop. Maybe I had two on this day, but I needed the energy to cycle uphill, and I love this. Sometimes the winds were so strong and the road was pretty bad and steep. Pictures never show how steep and exhausting it actually is, but yeah, sometimes you need to give your arms a little workout and then you will make your way to the top. And we had a rest day before we crossed the Velebit Mountains. This road was still closed because of the winter. And yeah, we were a little bit scared about the bears. So unfortunately for Raphael, I was singing songs 4 hours straight while cycling up the mountains. But I stopped singing as soon as it started snowing. And normally I enjoy cycling uphill a lot because then you can enjoy the downhill, especially when it's on tarmac roads. But yeah, in this weather, it's just freezing cold, slippery, and pretty dangerous. But we made our way down, and then the first hero of the trip approached us. It was Ivan. He came with his pickup. It was the first car we saw all day long, and he asked if I was all right, and I was just like freezing. I was like, no, I'm not all right. Please drive me to the next place. And he was driving us to Gospic, but not without making a stop at Nikola Tesla's home where he was born. So now I know where Nikola Tesla is from. Yeah. My name Vesna is a Slavic name, so many people in the Balkans are called Vesna. Unfortunately, I don't speak the language, but people always assume I know their language. Yeah, it's funny to meet people who have the same name as I am and also see Apatmani Vesna on the roadside. And There's also friendly people inviting me for food. If you're traveling, at this point, I was traveling alone again. I started chatting to the guy in the restaurant where I was charging my stuff and eating food, and he knew a little bit of German. So it was nice to, yeah, meet some locals and exchange some thoughts. After Croatia, I made my way into Bosnia-Herzegovina. I've cycled there previously with a friend, and I really loved it. And this time I cycled a different route, and I loved it again. And yeah, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, you have so many beautiful mountains, and just you need to be a little bit careful with wild camping because of the landmines. But other than that, it's super beautiful, very quiet, and yeah, I love mountains, so it's a good country for me. When you cycle into Mostar, you need to make sure that you have good brakes because I'm not sure if it works if I share this, but yeah, the roads sometimes were pretty bad. And that was also the reason why I was slow uphill and downhill. And then I made my way into Mostar and I spent the rest day there. I wanted to change my brake pads because I bought my bike secondhand and of course I did not change the brake pads before I started cycling. And in Mostar it was about time to change them, but I didn't know how to do it and I brought the wrong pads. So on the next day I went to the bike shop and the guy there, he laughed at me for not knowing how to do this by myself, but he was super friendly and showed me how to do it. So now I know how to change brake pads. It's not that hard. And yeah, sometimes you find beautiful places, sometimes you just take an abandoned barn where you set up your tent. Super quiet roads, very beautiful, and still snowy. And then I made my way up to a mountain hut where I met five Bosnian men, and they were playing cards and smoking so many cigarettes and drinking beer. And I was there as a young woman on my own. And one guy, he spoke a little bit of German, and I always looked at them. And then I asked if I can join their game. And I spent all evening playing cards with five random men and they were just like smoking nonstop. And the next morning I woke up and I felt like an ashtray, like I had a sore throat and everything because of the smoke. And he was the guy who knew a little bit of German and he invited me for breakfast to his place in the next morning. And yeah, his wife was super friendly and they welcomed me with some tea and homemade food. It was super lovely. And then it was a little bit of Sahara dust, so that's why the pictures look a little bit gloomy. I made my way into Montenegro. If you cycle in Montenegro on the Durmitor High Plateau, make sure to bring enough water because of the rock formations, it's cast. There are no rivers or anything, so yeah. But very beautiful landscape. And unfortunately, one of the roads was closed. In Montenegro, I had mostly perfectly paved, very small, quiet roads which was very enjoyable to cycle on. And this is in the Durmitor National Park. And yeah, I was stubborn. People told me before, yeah, you can't go there. The road is closed. I was like, I'm on a bike. Maybe I can cross there. But I met a guy on a motorbike and he had a drone and he was flying over it and telling me, no, you cannot cross. There's too much snow. So I listened and then I had to do a detour. I had to cycle all the way down here and then on the other side up again. So yeah, some extra climbing for my legs. Um, I was very scared of dogs my entire life, but because I've cycled in the Balkans like two or three times before, I knew what to expect from the street dogs, stray dogs. Normally, the stray dogs aren't a big problem because they just usually want some, I don't know, cuddles and food. The problem are more the shepherd dogs that want to protect something, but yeah on a trip like this, where you cross many, many countries, you develop a strategy on how to deal with dogs. And my strategy was always to slow down, calmly talk to the dogs, and try not to like that they don't chase you. And yeah, with this technique, I it worked pretty fine also in countries like Turkey and Georgia. So yeah. And then I crossed into Albania and I knew nothing about Albania. I didn't learn about Albania in school. And I was just thinking, oh, it's another country in the Balkans, probably similar language. But yeah, I should be proved wrong because I crossed the border and all of a sudden the language sounded totally different. There were new letters. And I was like, oh my God, everything's so different. And I crossed in Shkodra. And yeah, I really enjoyed the city. Also, so many people are cycling there, just using the bike as a way of transport around the city. And yeah, my first Albanian city, you definitely need to get used to the crazy drivers, but if you just drive as crazy as them, you will be fine. And in Albania, all of a sudden, there were so many turtles along the road, which was super nice. And in Škoda, I also had a rest day and I explored a little bit of the surroundings, which were super beautiful. And in Albania, it was the first time where I felt, okay, spring is here. I left the snow finally behind me. I can enjoy cycling in t-shirt again and not having to put on my down jacket in my sleeping bag when I'm camping. And yeah, I also took the ferry and did a detour into the Valbona Valley, which was very nice. And enjoyed the Albanian people and language and food. On this road, I was so happy that I was cycling and not driving in a car because I get motion sick very fast. And if you look on the map on this road, there are so many turns. I was very happy to enjoy it peacefully cycling and not having to drive there in the car. And of course, here I also met so many lovely, mostly men. In Albania, it was crazy because I'm a young woman and I was talking only to men for like a week because I don't know, I didn't meet any other women in Albania. I only met men. And some of the men were thinking I'm completely crazy for voluntarily cycling up the hill. So they were like, no, no, you cannot cycle here. You're crazy. Put my bike on the car and drove me up the mountain. And some days you just accept when people give you a lift for free. And sometimes you're like, oh no, I want to cycle on my own. Mosques are also the perfect rest stop for cyclists because they're not, there's always water, there's always a place to sit and shade. So yeah, it's perfect for bike travelers. Also in Turkey, mosques are the place to be. And then I made my way to Tirana. It's not on the Trans Dinarica route, but as I told you before, I met some guys that live in Tirana, so I wanted to visit them. And this is the new mosque. I think it's the biggest mosque on the Balkans at the moment, and they just finished it like 2024. I did some sightseeing in Albania and had a couple of rest days. And yeah, when you cycle and you're a bicycle nomad, you live on the road, you make the road your home, you just nap on the roadside and you just get used to being on the road all the time, enjoying. And sometimes you just need to take a nap and yeah, enjoy the view. This was Berat, the city of a thousand windows, also in Albania. And I explored some hot springs and some nice thermal waters. And this was the end of Albania, of the Albanian Alps. And then I made my way into Greece. And yeah, thank you. Maybe I rushed a little bit too much. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions and tell you more about the rest of my journey. I just brought pictures from the Balkans, and I can really recommend the Balkans. I've seen many countries, but it's a very good place to cycle.
I'm trying to turn on my video, but somehow I cannot. Be but you hear me, right? Uh,
No,
no, you cannot hear me?
I hear you, yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
don't
Okay, yeah,
see
you
you.
hear me. I cannot turn on the video because I can see. Okay, okay. Ah, okay. Now it works. Sorry. Somehow I turned on the drawing tool. Okay. Beautiful photos. Thanks a lot. If nobody else has questions, I have a couple.
Yeah.
So, and before I forgot, big thumbs up for your strategy with dogs. I have similar one. We also have dog at home, big shepherd dogs. And when I read people's, ideas how you should throw rocks at them and and spray them with pepper, it's impossible to say no. You have to be calm with dogs because if you're afraid, you cannot be. You cannot. But I believe this is something the
Yeah,
best way to do.
I was always very scared of dogs my entire life, but I would be even more scared if I throw a rock at a dog and then maybe it gets even more angry. So my strategy is just to calm down, take a second, try to walk, put my bike in between me and the dog and just like slowly walk away. And it worked. So
Yeah, when they see you, you're not aggressive to them. They should leave you alone. Okay, but forget this. One thing, why trip to Japan? How did you choose this? This is my first question. Second, can you just quickly describe? You said you bought a second-hand bike. I cannot see from the photos which brand and which tires. And third thing, maybe because we have different people and different way of cycling, and some will take hotels and good accommodation. And can you roughly describe what was costs for you traveling? I can imagine more on low costs on such a long trip. So these are my three.
I try to remember the three questions. Why Japan? I never wanted to cycle to Japan. It just happened. I started the trip with the like Central Asia in mind. I wanted to cross the Pamir Mountains because I've never been outside of Europe before this trip, and I liked the idea of starting at home and then going far. And when I crossed into Kyrgyzstan, my brother he joined me for the Pamir Highway for 1 month, and he flew back home. And my mom was always saying, "Oh, will you come back home as well?" And I was like, I think I want to continue. And then I looked on the maps and decided, do I want to go Southeast Asia or do I want to go more East Asia? And I decided, Tokyo is a nice end on the map. And yeah, then I also got a job back home starting from the 1st of January. So it was nice end to just arrive middle of December in Tokyo and then come back home because I live in the mountains. I go into the mountains every day. I've been on a ski tour just today. So yeah, it was not too bad to come back home. And the second question was my bike. Um, my bike is a German brand. It's Velotraum because I'm not that tall and also my legs are not the longest. So I had to make sure I have a frame that's small enough. For me, it was important. I don't like drop bar handles, so I wanted a flat bar handlebar. And I have a roll-off gear hub, and I was very happy with it. I didn't have any issues. Um, and yeah, for me, it was important that I have a like sturdy frame. I can attach things. I can go off-road, and I don't need to be worried that my frame will not make it. And yeah, I think it's very important that the frame size fits you well because you will spend many hours on your bicycle. And yeah, and then I was trying like I also used because I grew up with bike touring. Like as kids, we always did bike tours around Germany and the neighboring countries. So we already had a lot of stuff at home, like bike bags and stuff. So I just used them. And I didn't buy the newest ultralight gear, which will make my setup more lightweight, but I tried to use the things I already had at home. Like, for example, my gas stove, it's older than me and it worked perfectly fine. I didn't have a single issue with that. So, yeah, of course, you can go always more lightweight, but yeah, I think for me, I found a perfect way of carrying everything. I managed to climb every mountain I want to, and I made it to Tokyo, so I guess it was not too bad. And on the cost, I'm not too nerdy about my statistics, but I think it was around, it depended on like in the summer, I was very low budget in Central Asia because I was camping like all day, like every day. And then, for example, in China, Japan, Korea, I had to take some trains, some ferries, so that would added up to the costs. But on average, I was spending around 500 to 600 euros per month because I tried to camp most of the time. But sometimes I was also like, when it was raining too much, I was like, I will get this apartment or this hostel. I cannot be bothered to camp in shitty weather all the time. And yeah, I camped over half the time, like wild camping, and then I used warm showers a little bit. And sometimes I got invited, especially in Turkey and Central Asia, I got invited. And I think there's also questions in the
There's
chat.
one more question. Two. Yeah, two questions.
Um, my trip was 9 months long, and how did I cope mentally being on my own? So I was on the road for 9 months, and think I was around 6 months traveling alone. For example, as I told you, I met a Belgian guy, Raphael, and I cycled together with him 10 days. Then my mom joined me for 2 weeks in Turkey. We cycled together from Antalya to Kayseri. And then I met a German guy, and yeah, we just matched. We had the very same rhythm, and like we just got along very well. And when we met, I thought, we just cycled together 3 days, but it turned out 4 weeks. So I'm still in contact with him, so that's nice. And then my brother joined me for the Pamir Highway. So, and mentally, really enjoy traveling alone. But I'm also a very social person, so I like to chat with people. And I think it's harder to be alone when you're in a city because when I'm just camping in nature, it's just me and my tent, and I'm just happy to be outside on my own and more in. I think the loneliest I felt was on the end of my trip in Japan because for me personally, it was hard to get into contact with locals because of how the culture is there. It's very distant, very respectful. People don't ask you small talk questions. And I also tried to learn a few phrases of the local language always, so it was easier for me to communicate. But yeah. It's also nice, like I think as a woman for me I was, as you could see on the pictures, I met so many guys and I was lacking some female connections. And yeah, I met many solo traveling men and couples, and I only met around 4 or 5 other women traveling. But I know, for example, that there are WhatsApp groups for female bike travelers, so we exchanged our experiences and our thoughts and feelings. So that's also always nice to know that there are people dealing with the same issues as you.
I think it also you were. I'm talking for Trans Dinarica. You were really a bit early in the
Yeah,
season. If you would cycle in May, June, you would meet more people and more female cyclists for sure.
yeah, that's true.
And there is one question with Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. You can answer that also.
How was cycling in Uzbekistan, Tajikistan? Yeah, there were in Uzbekistan, I only cycled a couple of days, but there were enough cities and villages. And in Tajikistan, it's also totally fine. In the end of the Pamir, you need to plan a little bit ahead because there will be not too many shops. And also, like for a week or a couple of days, depending on how fast you are, there will be nothing. But yeah, then you just eat plain pasta with whatever you find and you will be fine. But it was not like you get also used to it, and then yeah, there will be so many mini markets selling so many sweets and dry biscuits. They are dry as hell, but if you need something to eat, you can eat them.
Okay, tires. You said you had 4 punctures on the whole trip.
Yeah.
What kind of tires and maybe how high pressure pump?
I'm not a
If
I'm
you
not a
know.
gear nerd, but I had Schwalbe Marathon, I think.
Could be, yeah.
And yeah, they were just on my bike when I bought it, and I didn't change it. So
Standard bike, but they work well.
Yeah, and then yeah, on my first puncture, it was for me personally very hard to like. I know how to fix a puncture. I did it before. It's not that difficult, but it was very hard for me to get my tire off. Like I was phoning my dad for 2 hours. Like it's not working. But in the end, I made it. So, and with every puncture, I got better.
You learn on the way.
Yeah, I learn on. Yeah, it's a good way to learn along the way.
Mhm. Beautiful. If there are no more questions, we'll slowly stop. If you have any specific questions for me, you can send to info@transdinarica.com. In 2 days, the weather will get better here. We expect
Yeah.
temperatures up to 20% in 20 degrees Celsius, because now it was still, very windy, very
Yeah.
cold. But now I think now the real season starts.
I'm hoping for this as well. I hope tomorrow starts the spring.
You,
Here it
you're
was
going
still
down to Italy,
snowing.
right?